Let's be honest, PvP in MMOs usually sucks. It's either an afterthought, a battleground queue, or just an excuse for high-level players to gank noobs with no consequences. So, when someone like Zyback sees Ashes of Creation, an MMO promising open-world PvP, he doesn't just get interested, he gets invested. Because what Zyback wants isn't politics, it's not sieges, it's not balance or meaningful risk. He just wants to fight, often, anywhere, without the game getting in his way. To him, Ashes was supposed to be the rare MMO that actually let PvP players play. No queues, no instancing, no theme park restrictions, just conflict, wherever and whenever it happened. So when Intrepid started rolling that vision back, removing lawless zones, locking caravans behind narrow PvP windows, and adding structure, Zyback saw it as a betrayal. Not because the design was broken, but because it wasn't built for him. And that's where this video starts. I'm not a PvP player. I'm not here to chase fights or pad kill counts. I'm a gatherer, a crafter, I'm an artisan, a PvE player who'd rather avoid combat. But I understand how important PvP is to a game like Ashes of Creation. I understand what it's supposed to add, I understand what Steven's vision is, but I also understand what Zyback and players like him are going to run into if they keep expecting the kind of PvP that they're used to. Because this is not Darkfall. It's not a free-for-all gank box. It's not the sandbox slaughterhouse people are pretending that it is. It's a system, a very slow political system. And if your fun depends on fast action and constant conflict, this game is going to disappoint you. This isn't a hit piece, it's a warning. We're going to talk about what Steven Sharif actually wants PvP to look like in Ashes of Creation, and why players like Zyback are set up to hate it, what Flanker's experience reveals about the limits of Intrepid's design, and what happens when the only people left enjoying PvP are the ones ruining the entire game for everyone else. Zyback isn't wrong for being frustrated. If you take what he wants at face value, constant PvP, low friction, high uptime, then yeah, Ashes of Creation looks like it's heading straight off of a cliff. To him, good PvP isn't about purpose, it's about access. Log in, find someone to kill, roll the clip, rinse, and repeat. What he doesn't want is to babysit a caravan timer. He doesn't want to miss the relic rotation and miss the chance to fight for one. And he definitely doesn't want to chase someone across the map just to watch them despawn like a mirage with legs. That's not PvP to him. That's a developer-created obstacle standing between him and the content he thinks he's entitled to. But here's the thing. Ashes isn't designed to give you fights. It's designed to give you reasons to fight. And that's a massive problem for players who just want to throw hands and upload the highlights to YouTube. Zyback wants conflict. Steven wants consequence. That's the difference. When lawless zones were removed, it wasn't some tragic loss of identity. It was Steven saying this is not Darkfall and it never was. PvP in Ashes isn't supposed to happen all the time. It's supposed to matter when it happens. And that sucks if your entire fun loop depends on never having to wait. You can hear it in how Zyback talks about content. He says he wants risk, but only if it creates more fights, not fewer. He wants meaning so long as it doesn't get in the way of farming kills. He doesn't want a PvP ecosystem, he wants a vending machine. And if the game doesn't dispense on demand, it's broken. But Intrepid isn't building a PvP vending machine. They're building a world. A world designed for everyone, including the people who'd rather trade than fight, or who will fight but only when there's something real on the line. In this game, PvP is not the goal. It's the cost of doing something important. Zyback wants PvP to be the main attraction, as Steven is making it the cover charge. And that's not a mistake, that's the plan. Because Steven didn't set out to build the next great PvP game. He set out to build a functioning world shaped by the players that inhabit it, and PvP is how players will actively change it. In most MMOs, PvP is a mode, a battleground, an optional toggle. In Ashes of Creation, PvP is pressure. It's what makes trade risky. It's what keeps monopolies in check, what turns politics into blood sport. It's not there just to be fun, it's there to make the world dangerous and interesting. And that's what PvP first players keep missing. Steven isn't designing around PvP players, he's designing around the consequences of PvP action. Everything in the system forces hard choices. If you run a caravan, you might lose everything. If you start a siege, you could wipe out weeks of progress for the entire server. If you kill a gatherer for no reason, say hello to corruption. PvP in Ashes isn't supposed to feel good, it's supposed to feel dangerous. Because when you fight, it's not just about who wins, it's about what changes when someone loses. When trade fails, the relic changes hands, the node collapses, and the economy will shift. That's PvP with context, PvP with stakes. And yeah, it's slower, it's political, and it's frustrating for kill-hungry players like Zyback, but it might be the reason Ashes avoids becoming just another throwaway MMO. The problem is, this design doesn't care about your schedule. There's no battleground queue, no daily checklist, no fight waiting for you when you're bored. PvP doesn't show up because you want it to. It shows up when someone gets in your way. And if that's not the game you're here to play, you're probably going to hate it. But what happens when the systems are in place and the only thing left is player behavior? That's where the whole open world PvP fantasy broke down for Flanker. Not everyone misunderstood Ashes of Creation. Some players like Flanker got exactly what they asked for. Open world PvP with minimal restrictions, inconsistent corruption enforcement, and no dev interference. A sandbox where players set the pace. And what did he find as a result? One of the biggest PvP guilds on the North American server running from fair fights. Envious, a North American PvP guild, wouldn't engage with Flanker's guild unless the fight was already stacked in Envious's favor. If Flanker's group showed up with numbers, they vanished. If the odds were even, they didn't flag up, because they didn't have to. And they're not the only ones dodging fights. Just recently, Intrepid had to patch the game so that caravans didn't instantly despawn when the driver disconnected, because players were bailing the moment they were under threat. Instead of fighting to defend their cargo, they just vanished. Not because the system was broken, but because it let them avoid losing. There was no reward for fair fights, no incentive to risk a loss, just opportunity cost. And that's the Achilles heel of sandbox PvP. You can remove the rules, but you can't force players to step up. You get conflict, sure, but only when it's convenient for one party. Only when it's profitable. The Flanker didn't lose those fights. He lost the reason to care about them. Because what players say they want, freedom, risk, emergent gameplay, isn't always what they actually enjoy. They say they want danger, they say they want chaos, but what they actually want is a fight they know they can win. And Ashes of Creation doesn't give them that. Not in its current form. That's not a flaw. That's the point. Steven is building a system where fairness isn't guaranteed, where conflict is messy, and where PvP may never be balanced, because it's not supposed to be. But that reality is going to hit hard when the Alpha 3 crowd shows up in August. Because for most players, getting stonewalled in grind spots, ganked while gathering, or out-progressed by people gaming the system is not content. It's a reason to uninstall. And here's the scary part. When fair fights get ignored, when risk is avoided, and when the best strategy is to bail before anyone can flag up, the only players still enjoying PvP are the ones who don't care about any of that. They're not here for balance, they're not here for conquest, they're here to ruin someone's day. Because if the system rewards disengagement, and the only reliable PvP encounters are ambushes on solo gatherers or ganks at grind spots, then what kind of player thrives in that environment? The ones who are not looking for a fight, just a victim. And here's the problem. Ashes of Creation as it stands today doesn't do a great job filtering those players out. If anything, the current systems encourage toxic behavior. Want to attack someone just trying to harvest ore? No problem. Just flag for PvP, stun them, and let them fight or run away. Maybe they'll lose and you'll get whatever they gathered up to that point, maybe hours of work. Want to grief low-level players until they log off? Sure, corruption will punish you eventually, but only if they don't fight back and they die in the process, and especially not if you're just using plain white generic gear from the vendor. Want to drag someone into PvP they clearly don't want just to feel powerful? The system won't stop you. If anything, it just hands you the bait. This is what happens when meaningful PvP turns into meaningless harassment. When the systems allow conflict, but don't reward sportsmanship or discourage trolling. And I get it. Some people call this hardcore. Some call it risk versus reward, and they tell us to embrace the suck. But if the only players who stay engaged in the system are the ones making everyone else miserable, that's not a PvP system. It's a griefing simulator. Exactly like so many players predicted Ashes would become. Ashes of Creation players have been sounding the alarm since the first alpha. The systems are promising, but the incentives are broken. And that's not just on the community, that's on Intrepid. Because it doesn't matter how detailed the systems are, if the smartest play is still to run, dodge, or grief someone who can't fight back. That's not meaningful conflict. That's just a sandbox for sociopaths. Zyback isn't wrong for wanting better PvP. He's wrong about how we get there. It's not about frictionless fights or non-stop action. It's about building a world where conflict means something, where risk actually matters. And if Intrepid can't deliver that, we won't just get bad PvP, we'll get a game that only trolls can enjoy. That's all for today. You're welcome.